Okay, we're at 10 o'clock, and since everybody's here on time, we love to reward people who are on time by starting on time. The whole idea behind Zoom, of course, is I think we're all getting more used to it now, more relaxed and being able to talk. So that's really what we want to try to do in all these kind of they're really workshops. We want to stimulate some ideas in your head, and no matter how crazy or weird you think your idea is, share it, because what we thought was crazy and obnoxious, even 2 years ago, is all now the norm. I mean, who thought we'd ever be having all of our meetings and conversations with our customers and walkthroughs and showing properties, via camera on our phone? So it's now the norm. So yeah, like I said, anything wild, wacky, weird. Hi, John. Let's share them with them. The thing we've been noticing is obviously the market is like super stupid crazy. I have no other word for it. It's just, we were talking to Amanda this morning, and she said people are just getting the idea. They're hearing a whisper that she's going to be getting a listing in like a week or so. They're already clamoring. I want to make an offer. Can I see it? Can I do whatever? And it's not ready to be shown, all of that kind of stuff. So the good part for you guys as listing agents is you can create a whole list of people for your coming soon and say, you know what, I'm gonna put it on the market on Monday at 9 o'clock. So from 9 to 12, I'm gonna sit at the house and you guys can all come in and take a look at it. And the chances of a listing agent double dipping is just increased tremendously. So keep going after the listings. And that kind of brings us to the contracts. You've got all these people that are forced to buy something at a high price, right? And they're going into competition with a lot of other buyers. I was showing my friends and family discount people yesterday or Sunday a house. We were in the driveway, and I called the agent after we looked at the property, and the buyers really, really wanted to make an offer. And I called her and I said, they're going to make an offer. And she said, well, great. We're holding 2 offers now. We're going to have an open house from 1 to 3. And then the seller's going to look at all of the offers. So that immediately gave us a heads up. What do we do? What do we have to do with our offer to make it more attractive than those at least 2 to 4 offers that are going to be there? Has anybody been running into that situation lately? And what's the first thought that jumps into your mind when you said, oh my God, I'm in competition with a bunch of offers? Okay, see, the whole idea behind a workshop is you're supposed to share. So
the first thing I think of is crap, of course.
Yeah, that's really it. And I went around and I talked to agents from other companies and managers and stuff, and said, what's your little main tip? What's your secret of getting an offer accepted? Because everybody's coming up with different ideas. Some of these are going to be more traditional ideas that we're going to talk about. Others may be really hard for some of your customers to swallow. This is a super, super competitive market. And it's not just always price that gets a property sold, just like regular, right? I mean, if you've got a couple that's getting divorced, maybe the most important thing to that divorced couple is timing, getting that property closed and off the books, as opposed to getting a higher price. An investor who's had it for years may be willing to sit out and hang in there because they want to say, I sold my house for 40% more than I paid for it. So I think the first trick is try to find out from the listing agent some history on the property, what the seller's motivation is, so that you can start structuring your offer to where it's going to be very attractive to those people. Some of the old funny things that we used to do, when my children bought a house this past year, this was a woman's personal home that she was leaving because she was elderly. So she moved out. Now, my son and his daughter-in-law have 2 fantastic boys, the best children in the whole entire world, of course, because they're my grandchildren. So my daughter-in-law went ahead and composed a letter. And I think Joanna's got a little copy of it you can look at. The idea was not that one. The other one was to personalize up herself and her children. And, she gave all kinds of history about who she was, what they did for a living. She mentioned my son was a deputy and talked about she's a teacher. and there's a pool and there's water. So she was talking about all the ways that they were going to create memories for their family in this new house. So we were looking for those emotional ties to that seller because we were in a multiple offer situation as well. And my kids could not just go up and up and up in price. They had a limited budget that they had to work with. They attached a little photo of the family so she could see how cute and wonderful they are. And this could be a really good thing. Not just letters, but maybe think about making a little mini video. You know, nothing says something more than when it's live and in person. They can hear the sincerity in your voice and bond in a little bit more. The one thing I do want to caution you on when you do this is be very careful not to violate any kind of our protected classes. That seems to be the only thing that FR and NAR has been challenging us on these letters. It used to be we just did it no matter what. But just be kind of careful how you put it so that you don't run the risk of offending someone based on those 7 protected classes. I'm not going to repeat them because everybody has their license and everybody knows. So if you get a gut feeling that it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, just don't do it. But those letters can work really, really well. It worked in this case for my son and daughter-in-law. They actually had a lower priced offer than the other offer. And she accepted it because she really wanted to see a family moving into her house. So that's one really huge tip. It's old school tip, but it really, really does work. One of the other things that we've had happening is the possibility of absolutely no contingencies. You know, cash almost always wins, as we know. But what if you went in and you decided you weren't going to do the home inspection, or you weren't going to do a financing thing, and just strip it down to here's the money, you know, and a fast close, and let's close. That's one possibility. Runs a lot of risks when you do things like that. Go ahead.
I don't know if you can see the comments, but John McGee had commented that for him, what's working, or what he's seeing that's working, is removing as many contingencies as possible, going in above the list price, and making sure that you make your buyers feel confident going in above list price by showing them the comps. And Crystal was saying comps just seem to be out the window at the moment, but they're not mattering anymore. But I think a lot of people can agree on the contingencies kind of getting in the way.
Yeah, people are starting. We used to put the appraisal contingency in there as a matter of course with financing. That seems to just automatically be getting rejected, just totally rejected. So think about that. Again, it depends on the stomach that your customer has for playing the game. Because when we're talking about releasing contingencies, think about it. If you really do need to get financing, if you are so comfortable that after you've talked with your lender, that you are going to get that loan no matter what, you could be really brave and do a cash offer. It says my internet connection is unstable, so I'm not sure if I'm glitching. So I'll kind of just repeat what I just said. But if you are super confident, oh good. So far, so good. So yeah, again, if you are super confident that you have the money somewhere, whether it's in your Merrill Lynch account or whether you're getting that loan, if you're super confident that you have the cash, take out that financing contingency, and that can make your offer super attractive. Again, it's that level of risk and gambling that your customer is willing to take on that. Kind of piggybacking off of that, there are several mortgage companies who do pre-approval. I mean, true mortgage approval as opposed to the pre-qual, right? Even though they call it a pre-approval. I mean, Movement Mortgage is one for sure that I know of. They will qualify the person. They will pull all the tax records. They will do everything through the loan, have that customer ready to go. The only thing that isn't approved is the property. That, if you have to have a financing contingency in there, that's probably the best one that you can have is, here, my buyer's pre-approved. Now all we have to do is approve the property. That could be one thing that you want to do. When we're talking about inspection contingencies, either shorten that up really fat, really tight and short, or consider not even having an inspection contingency. Again, it's the guts factor for the customer. If you take your time and go back through the house and really take a look at the house before you make an offer on it, the buyer can have a certain level of confidence in that. On the other side of this now, turn your listing agent hat on. Since you know that's a problem with a lot of our buyers, they still want that inspection contingency in there. What if when you list it, you go do a pre-listing inspection, have them pay for a home inspection, attach it to the MLS and say, here it is, here's what's wrong with the house, everything. So take it and go from there. Then you have less chances of people backing out after the offer's accepted. Does anybody do that with their sellers? What's your feedback on that? What do you think?
I prefer not to.
Okay, because
it depends on the circumstances, though. I mean, it really does. In today's market, we're having so many buyers just choosing not to have one entirely. So why open the can of worms?
That's true, and that's a really good way to take a look at it. I think some of the bigger things, maybe like a roof. I was thinking more like that. If you as the seller know that roof's going to be a problem down the road, even then address the big ticket items. Agreed. Like right up front. You know, because sellers can get greedy sometimes, and they go, I don't care, my roof's falling apart, but the market's so hot, they're going to take it anyway, and they're going to pay $20,000 above market and then deal with the roof. No, when they're paying above market price for things, the buyers want that house to be in really good shape. And that's something to counsel your sellers when you talk to them. Yes, it is a crazy hot market. There's not a lot out there, but your property better be the absolute best that you can make it if you're going to expect to get more money than it would have normally been worth. And again, I just think that makes more sense. It's going to avoid problems as you get through the transaction. And we want it to close so we all get money, and then we can celebrate, right? Okay, so I talked about personal letters. We talked about no contingencies. We do know when I said multiple offer situation, you normally would automatically counsel your customers to make your best offer, right? You really need to encourage them to do that. You know, the listing price is now the starting price. It's no longer you're going to come off that number. It's the starting price. Have them come in and really give strong consideration to what is the most money, the terms that you feel super, super confident with, that you can live with. And then go in very, very strong. Yeah, jump in.
JJ, I've been trying to express all these details to our buyers and even the sellers on what to expect in this market ahead of time. And sometimes it's just so much information for them to absorb. The mere fact that we're saying that the list price is the starting price just is like, what do you mean? We used to offer 50,000 less, and it's a hard thing for them to grasp all these things. So I kind of wrote up what does highest and best mean, and why do I have to do that for the very first offer? Because you may not get a counter offer. You may only get one shot. And what does every single term mean to you, and what you could do to remove that term if you felt comfortable doing so, such as inspections and appraisal and, you know, all of these little details. And it seems to be well received.
So you're educating them before they go out, so they know the rules of the game before they go.
Yeah, you're right. It's the rules of the new game.
Yeah, I think that's great. Maybe that's what you guys need to do, is write on a sheet, rules of the new game of home buying. That could be a really good thing to use in your buyer counseling as well. And if you're starting your conversations with your customers via email and all of that, a good thing to attach over, which can also segue into your buyer broker's agreement when you're starting to talk to them about how you're going to be working for them. When you are in a tight negotiating thing like that, it's really super important that your customers understand how you are representing them, because different states have single agencies, some states have dual agencies, some have transaction brokers, some have transitioning, all of that kind of thing. We at Jones & Company primarily operate as a transaction broker. If you don't really know how to explain that, come and have a conversation with me. You need to be able to spit that out about what your role is in confidence, so that the customer can feel that you are still working with them and helping them get the best deal, but yet you are not representing them 110%. If they want single agency, that's a whole other conversation. But just make sure buyers are aware of that. And that was a really, really good point, Crystal. I think when you're talking about the offers, and we just had this come up yesterday, Ashley Riggle has a beautiful brand new listing. The agent sent over an offer their high, you know, their best offer, the seller countered back to something that I think they accepted it. And then the buyer came back and added something stupid, like we want to add a refrigerator in, like in the garage or something. They opened the door. They changed the contract one tiny little bit on the second go around. So now what happens? While they're fiddle, yeah, well, guess what happened? Cash offer comes zipping in that 4 or 5 hours, and there it went. You know, our agent was very concerned about it, and we were talking about, okay, what's legal, what's ethical, what's moral. You know, your sellers all ultimately make that decision. We won't let them do anything unethical. We won't do anything unethical, but because that buyer made a change to the contract, it became a counteroffer. So that opened it up. The seller could say, well, yeah, I started the deal with you and I want to go ahead and finish it. Or maybe I'm going to take this other offer first. So the seller was now in total control of it. So if you have a buyer, please, please, please don't let them do something that horrendous where they could lose their house. And in this case, that's what happened. That little fight over a fridge, they lost a house. Shame, shame, shame. Now, if that does happen though, keep in mind, your buyers could be looking at going into a backup position. A lot of these first contracts will fall out for whatever reason, whether they stretch too far in their financing or they had an inspection, something happened in there. So don't let your buyers get totally discouraged. You know, go ahead and make a backup offer and continue looking. That way you may still get the house that you wanted. I think that's a good offer, you know, a good idea for that, and good for you as you go. Fast closings are huge these days. And it could be fast closing with a seller post occupancy. We're starting to see more of that because the market's so hot and the seller's not sure where they're going to go. I mean, they know they put their house on the market today. It might be sold by the end of today, and oh my gosh, they don't know where the heck they're going. So post occupancy is becoming more prevalent. I think that's something to consider. Again, when you're first talking to the listing agent, kind of float that out there. You know, would the seller consider staying in the house another 30 to 60 days? And they may really, really like that. So consider using that as well. When we were talking about all these ways of money and all of that kind of stuff, several of the other agents also mentioned to me making larger deposits. Traditionally in our area, when you make an offer on a house, it's like $1,000 for an escrow, and then they usually don't offer an extra escrow. I would consider talking to the buyer about that. If they're going to put down, you know, 10 or 20% as part of their financing, well, why not put a larger amount down 3 days after the offer is accepted? So instead of 1,000, maybe put 5,000. That immediately gives a little bit more credibility. The other option would be to add an additional deposit within so many days after. Tier that up so that there's more money in escrow. The buyer still has it protected, right, with any contingencies that are there. But now the seller feels the buyer is really in the game. You know, $1,000, $2,500, you can walk. You can fight over that in an escrow dispute. And sellers are aware of that. So the more money you put down, the more serious you look at it. And again, now the other thing to do, and this becomes more, again, guts factor, a little bit more risky. If you put the deposit in there, consider maybe making one of those deposits a hard deposit. What do I mean by that? If they put the original $5,000 down 3 days after acceptance, what if they make that hard after 15 days? They may still have their financing contingency, but you know what? 5 days after in, that money becomes hard. And that means the seller now can get that money. The buyer has relinquished that. Basically what they're doing is they're buying the right to close on the property. That's all they're doing, is they're saying, I am guaranteeing you that I'm going to close, and I'm so confident in it that I'm going to let you keep $5,000 of my money no matter what. That's something to really consider. So larger deposits, hard deposits seem to be one of the biggest tricks that most of the agents that are successfully selling houses in our area seem to be using. Escalation clauses came on like gangbusters, and everybody started using escalation clauses. There's a good article in Florida Realtors Magazine about that as well. But and Joanna has it there. We decided to go the super simple route with this because you guys are not attorneys. It can get really complicated with escalation clauses. So we put some very basic words in there. In the event seller receives one or more bona fide offers with acceptable terms, the buyer will increase the offering sales price. How much? Well, you know, whatever they feel more comfortable with, higher than the highest offer. So there's a cap. The buyer still has control of how much they're going to pay, with the final accepted sale price not to exceed blank, whatever that top number is that the buyers are willing to pay. It does require the seller to provide documentation or the contract to the buyer to start that. This is the super simple one. It can get really, really complicated with percentages going up and down and based on this and that. If you start getting into that kind of a thing, that's when the buyer pulls their attorney into the conversation, because we are not attorneys. We do not write contracts. But you can put this wording in there that's been approved by our attorney, and it's all good. You might want to
have a question.
Yeah, sorry.
Question. And maybe we address it, but like, let's say it's $1,000 higher than your best offer. I would think I would prefer to see it higher than your best net offer.
You can, that's, again, you can do that. Now, how you would have to define then what net would be.
Right.
That's why I said this is the super basic language.
Yeah.
And because net offer can be different, right? Again, is the buyer looking for the highest price? You know, what's he looking for? So when you start thinking like that, like Crystal's talking about the net offer, absolutely fine. Give us a call, kind of talk about what you're trying to accomplish with it, and we'll look at it. If it's something minor, we can throw it over to, you know, our attorney and have her take a really quick look at it. But if it gets really super complicated, again, we're going to send it right over to the buyer's attorney, because I don't want to get sued, and I don't think you want to get sued either. That's a good point. Escalation clauses, we're starting to see some pushback now from sellers because of the complex ones that are coming in, like the net offer and all that. They don't want to share, you know, all of their information, that what's going to be coming out of their the sale proceeds. So we're seeing some sellers absolutely refuse escalation clauses, which is really kind of weird, but we are seeing that. Sellers are starting to refuse certain things too. What is it? 65% of today's homeowners are buying loans that are they're getting houses with FHA, VA, USDA, some kind of a government-backed loan. That's the majority of our loans. That usually means those people are putting less money down. And in the past, our FHA and VA required a lot of the fees be paid by the seller. So when a seller accepted a government-backed mortgage contingency, it might cost them actually more money out of pocket to sell their house. That has changed dramatically. A veteran can get a VA loan and it won't cost the seller one single penny more, really. Same thing with an FHA. It can be structured where the sellers are not paying any additional money. What you got to do is get a really good lender. We played a game like that up in Port Charlotte. There was a whole community in Port Charlotte. They all got their noses in a snit, and everybody in the community decided together. They're not realtors, so they just bonded together and did whatever they wanted to do. We can't do that as realtors, antitrust, right? But all of them just kind of decided they weren't going to take any loans with FHA or VA on there because they were scared, and they thought it was going to cost them all this extra money and stuff. So we got together with a very strong mortgage lender. Tracy Van Lenshoot with Mortgage One did this for us. And we qualified the buyer at a conventional mortgage rate. We wrote the offer at a conventional mortgage rate, provided the pre-approval, did all of that. And then she got approved for her conventional loan. And then at the very end, right before we went to closing, we flipped it into an FHA loan. Again, it wasn't costing the seller any more money. So at that point, they really didn't care. They signed the FHA addendum at closing, and our buyer was able to get the house that she really, really wanted. So work with your mortgage broker. That's not fraud. It's not deceit. It's just creative financing. Keep in mind when your buyers sign the contract, you know, it says what type of financing they're looking for, at the interest rate, all the terms. They are simply saying to the seller that this is the mortgage that I'm going to get approved for and I agree to buy the house if I get approved for that kind of mortgage. Doesn't require that the buyer stay with that mortgage that they approved, that they went approved for. If they wanted to get a higher LTV or a lower LTV on their mortgage, the buyer has the control of that, but as long as they meet the terms of the contract for financing, then the seller is assured that they have a loan. So you're not doing anything wrong. And if you wanted to get into more details and have a conversation with me offline, I'm more than happy to do that with you as well. I think that's
go ahead.
Yes.
A point for the whole mortgage situation. Tracy's done it really beautifully about 4 or 5 times. She was sharing great stories about how this works. You know, you go in conventional and then right at the closing table, you flip it. They don't care because the seller's getting their money. What do they care if you're getting an FHA loan or closing? That works great. 2 weeks back where it didn't work great. People are starting to catch word of this about flipping it. It's a great concept. But so they just think that they can do this without really getting the right lenders to do it. And you want to make sure you get the right lender that can do it, because we had the listing, Billy had the listing, I should say, and the buyers came to them just after the inspection period and said, oh, well, we're flipping to FHA. Like, you're not supposed to do it to the closing table. You don't give your cards away halfway through, because you can get the sellers in a snitch, which her seller did get in a snitch, but their mortgage company they had was not as flexible, did not have as much freedom as Tracy's did. And they required that FHA addendum right then and there, or there was no way they were getting approved for the loan. So it ruined the whole deal essentially, because they wanted that FHA addendum signed. And therefore that was going to hold the seller to the terms of an FHA loan instead of a conventional loan. And that is not how that whole flip works. You're doing it at the closing table. You're playing, you know, hard and fast, hoping you get approved for an FHA, and then everything's done at the closing. But if you're doing it beforehand, you're really pissing off your seller. So
yeah, no, that's a good point. It's all about communication and making sure everybody is going to do the same thing. So if you're on the buyer's side, have that conversation with the lender. And if you're not sure about the lenders, call the different lenders that we have preferred, have a phone conversation with them, take them to lunch, you know, create that camaraderie with it. And, you know, if you want to talk to Billy about how her deal went sideways, give her a call. You know, you got to be really, really careful with it. It's all about communication and keeping the confidence of our customers. Sellers are getting very, very nervous now because there's so many offers on the plate. They wonder how many of them are real offers, how many of them aren't. We're seeing a lot of offers come in where the customer has never seen the house at all, and neither has the agent. We're getting agents that are coming in from outside of the area that aren't experts in our area. We've had some recently come from Orlando and Miami, and then they call up and they go, well, you know what, my customer is interested in it. Can you show the property to my customer for me? And I'm going to write it up. Right. How can you service your customer and write a really good offer without ever knowing what the property looks like, what the neighborhood is, what the terms are of our area? You know, some areas sellers traditionally pay for title, some buyers traditionally pay for title. Those are all little movable factors in the net offers and that kind of thing as well. So give some thought to that as well, because there's closing costs. Even when a seller accepts a cash offer, there's doc stamps that the state of Florida takes. You know, there's little transfer fees, and then there's title insurance and all of that. Try to take that into consideration when you're on the buying side. You know, can you go in there and pay most of the seller's closing costs? Say, you know, buyer will pay up to $5,000 of seller's closing costs. That could be really interesting rather than just increasing the sale price of the property. Sometimes sellers are going to end up having to pay capital gains on it, or they're not going to move their homestead. This may be the final time, things like that. So consider playing with closing costs on that kind of thing as well. That may make some real good sense. 1031s are really good. Those are super ways to get your properties looking good when you write a contract, because a 1031, they know that the buyer has X number of dollars to spend on a property. The buyer is motivated because they have a certain amount of time to identify the properties that they want to buy. So that can put an offer up above And that's just as good as a cash offer when you have 10.
Right underneath the baseboard. Nicey, nicey.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Cindy, how are you? Welcome, Cindy. Cindy is one of our women painting contractors and realtors. She's a do everything kind of a woman. Welcome,
Nice
welcome
day.
to the webinar. Do you have any great ideas or bad ideas to share with us about how to get your offers presented in today's market, how to get them accepted? Okay, I know we got the chats going on, which is really, really kind of cool, and Joanna's been monitoring that. When we're talking about a lot of offers too, I think you're starting to see where they're doing more of those. Here's an open house. We're going to accept offers between, today and Wednesday. You'll see a lot of that in the MLS, and then, highest and best by that day. That's one way of doing it. So when you're making your offer, think about that. The sellers are not obligated to stay within that time frame. So I'm hoping I'm going to make that clear. So say you list the property on Saturday and you put in the MLS, seller will entertain all offers through Tuesday at 5 p.m. Well, if you've got a buyer and you can go in there with a kick-ass contract, you may be able to get that seller to just say, this offer is so freaking good that I'm not going to wait until Tuesday. And that could be part of the contract as well. Put that time frame for the seller to respond in a very short time frame. It strengthens your position as a buyer to that seller, saying, we're serious, we're going to buy a house, but we're not willing to wait 5 days for you to respond. So here's a really fantastic offer for you, Mr. Seller. Take a look at it, but you're going to have to accept it today. That is one really good way that it can work. We just had that happen. Again, hot property, we were expecting multiple offers, and all the agents are flowing through, trying to look at it and all of that. One of the buyers just said, this is the house I really want, and I'm willing to do almost anything to make that house mine. So they came in with an insanely wonderful cash, no contingency contract, but they required the seller respond and accept their contract right away. Seller thought about it. We counseled and we said, you know what, the seller doesn't have to meet the terms of what he put in the MLS, accept the offer, put it pending, and then get that wording out of MLS. And if anybody chokes back at it, just say, it's the seller's property. The seller can change their mind anytime they want, as long as they're doing it legally, in which case the seller did, and they have an accepted offer. And so I guess the bottom line is if you're thinking of doing something kind of crazy and insane, run it past me first so we can put it up against the legal litmus test. And then if it passes that and you're doing everything legally, professionally, and ethically, then absolutely go for it. Anybody else? Ideas?
I see that Crystal threw in her best price and terms outline in the chat if you guys want to download it. Thank you, Crystal.
It's just a draft, but it's to try to help people see. We're really kind of massaging it and working on it. I'm going to add to it JJ's idea, though, about the pre-approval and having the lender stress that the only contingency or condition is the property. That's a really great idea, as well as I didn't add in there, but I've used in the past, having the lender call the listing agent to speak of the validity of the pre-approval and how strong they feel that buyer really is. Because again, we're all looking at a piece of paper. Sometimes we're looking at 3, sometimes we're looking at 30 different offers here as listing agents on that side of it. So whatever we can do to help that listing agent really understand how strong that buyer is a great idea.
Absolutely. And sometimes bringing the listing agent into reality. John brought up bringing the most recent solds because that can make a difference. You can take a stupid offer and then you get down the road and you find out that they can't get the insurance for that kind of amount and that now the buyer might be backing out. So bring in as many of the most recent comps that you can. If you see that there's properties that are pending, call those listing agents and just get a range. They might not tell you exactly what it sold for, but they'll give you an idea, like, you know, oh yeah, it sold for 20,000, you know, plus more than it was listed, so that you've got something that you can have some background to either validate what the seller is looking for, or to validate why you're not going way too far as the buyer. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to sell, everybody wants to buy, and they want to move forward. So that job of ours has never changed. Our job is to make everybody feel like they've won and they've gotten the best deal that they possibly can, and love us, so that they will continue to refer us. And again, that's the name of the game. So that's, yes.
JJ, I'm also seeing a lot of offers have an appraisal gap contingency. Instead of removing the appraisal contingency entirely, if they don't have an abundance of cash, going ahead and saying, I'm willing to bridge the gap if we fall short on the purchase price versus the appraisal with $5,000 or $10,000. And that seems to be a pretty common thing I'm seeing on a lot of deals now.
Good point. I completely forgot about that. Yeah.
Limiting that amount.
Yeah. And we actually just did that on a house in the Southwest area. We had it listed at 500. The buyers went in at 510, and they put in the addendum that they were willing to pay up to $50,000 above the appraised price because they really wanted it. Fortunately, it appraised at $510,000. Woo! So they didn't have to kick that in. But we had another one where the house sold at $300,000 and it only appraised at $280,000. So the buyer was willing to make up the gap. But I think that's a really good point. That's probably one of the best things that buyers can use if they have the financial ability to do that. The other thought was, if they don't have the financial ability to do this and a lender is okay with it, the seller could potentially carry a small second mortgage for that gap. It's been a long time since we've seen that. You've got to work with the appropriate lenders when you do that, but that's a possibility. You know, before, like if people needed to get a better rate, if they had more money down, we would have the seller sometimes carry that second. Think about using that again as well. It's good for the sellers because they get the price that they want, plus they're going to get some interest, and the neighbors all love it because now their whole neighborhood just went up in value. So think about that. It's an easy way to write it short and simple and sweet. Run it past us to make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to take you off the wrong. But that's really, I think that's another really good thing to think about. It all comes down to money at the end of the day. It's just, where are you going to put the money, and how is it going to translate getting into the seller? I think this market is going to continue through the rest of the year for sure. Where it goes next year, we'll wait and see. I think investors are going to come back into the market maybe a little bit later, more with 1031s and things like that. Rental properties are the most volatile part of our market right now. A lot of our investors have held the property a long time, and they're starting to see where they can make a lot of money off of their investments. They're selling their investments, but they're not buying another one right now. They're kind of holding and watching. So I think you're going to see that change as we get a little bit closer towards the end of the year. New construction is really coming on gangbusters for the investors, because right now it's almost cheaper to build a house than it is to buy an existing property. So those things also factor into the prices that your sellers are going to be able to get in the future for their houses. So you have to kind of keep your customers updated on where the market trends are. Pay a lot of attention to what's going on in Florida Realtors. Watch NAR. We've got our mid-year meetings right now going on. Look for Elliot Eisenberg, our bow tie economist. He has some really good practical advice, and he touches on Florida quite a bit. Dr. Lawrence Yoon from NAR is always posting things out there. If you don't subscribe to Inman News, you might want to really, really look at Inman. Go Google it, look at them. They're one of the premier reporting agencies for real estate. So they are really, really good for giving you trends and things that are going to happen in your real estate career. So that's a really good way to be prepared. And you can share that information out with your customers. You're going to look like you're more professional. You're going to show them that you're not just riding this wave of the financial, low fruit kind of thing, that you are committed to their future as well as yours through real estate. That's going to be the end of our little workshop today. I hope you picked up 1, 2 great ideas. I hope we've stimulated your brain to think of some more ideas, and we'd love for you to share them. You can do that on the team page if you'd like. We look forward to that. So I'm not going to do any commercials. This is just going to be the end of it. We're going to try to keep it up on YouTube so that those of you who weren't able to attend today will be able to gather some really good information from being a part of the Jones & Company Realty team. So have a fantastic week and stay nice and warm. Bye.